Okay. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining Destination Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness. My name is Sarah Weiberg. I am your host today. It's kind of interesting doing this all via a recording, so please bear with me. But I am a graduate student at Bloomsburg University as the student, as the grad assistant for Student Involvement Office. And the academic coach in academic support services. If you see me referencing over here, it's just because I have a few notes to keep me on track through the recording. But I really want to go over like why you decided to come to this session today. I mean, it is great that it is recorded, so you are probably tuning in either in your office, at home. It could be a Saturday night, because sometimes that happens in higher ed, or a Wednesday night after the kids go to sleep. So I'm excited that you decided to join me today, or tonight, or wherever you are. But you decided to check out this recording because you wanted to know more about immigrant students in the population altogether, but specifically in higher education, and elevate your understanding on that and how to help them succeed. So Destination Life, Liberty, and the Pursuit of Happiness is supposed to help you understand a bit of their background, understand what they have gone through, what their families have gone through, and how they got here today in terms of getting to college, how to build that trust with them and further that relationship and further your advocacy for your students afterwards. I do provide resources at the end, and hopefully if I can figure it out in a link on YouTube, if I'm going to be able to upload this to YouTube. So stay tuned. I hopefully will be there. But that is my goal for you today. Before we get started on that, though, I want to provide you a bit of background on me. I was born and raised in Southern California to a man who immigrated to the United States at the age of 23 or 24, I want to say, from Italy. And he met my mom in Southern California. And eventually I came along, and why is that important? It's important because it gives you a sense of, okay, so Sarah understands a bit of where she's coming from with all of this. I do not identify as an immigrant student. I more identify as a second generation American. And that's a more recent identification due to research after I learned, oh my gosh, there's a label for that. And my dad was, when he immigrated, he was eventually able to get his green card, and that was when I was born, around that time. And then eventually, years later, well into my teens, became a naturalized citizen. So he had to take the fun test and all that. And so that gives me that gives me a certain point of view. But also growing up in Southern California, the immense diversity that's there, and having friends who were immigrants. So between the two situations, I deeply empathize with the immigrant student population. Moving forward, as we start this presentation, I do want to provide a bit of a content warning. This is some heavy stuff that we're talking about. I could mention violence or warfare. I could mention anything to do with death. I could mention even the pandemic, because that can be triggering for some people, because let's be real, the pandemic has been a whole new thing. So at any point that you feel that you need to pause and breathe, or even reflect on anything that I say, please do so. I encourage it. I'm trying to not have this presentation go for the full 45 minutes. So then you do have that time to pause and reflect, and hopefully it will be a well-rounded 45 minutes for you. I do not want to ignore what is happening in the U.S. in regards to President Trump's family separation policy as well. And I provide resources for that at the end, because that's a huge deal, and it might not affect some of your students now, but it will affect your future students and how they see the government and how they see you. So keep that in mind through this presentation. And then lastly, please make sure to pause this video if you need to grab pen and paper. I do ask you to write a few things down or take notes as needed. So as we move forward, let me click over here. Okay. So I'm going to start off with an immersive experience. You're probably sitting there thinking, are you serious? What is this? So please, if you can, just sit in your chair and relax, feet flat on the floor. Your hands either on your armrest or relaxed by your side. Lean back in your chair and take in your surroundings. I'm going to ask a series of questions about those surroundings. So whether it is your home office or institution's office or a makeshift closet, you know, it's the time, so it's really okay. And we shall begin. So look around your space, and I want you to really understand what you see right in front of you. Do you have food and water at your desk or by your side, readily available? Do you have heat on in the house, or do you have heat in general, or air conditioning? I know it's getting cold in Pennsylvania, so I've had to turn my heat up once or twice on my toes, but do you have those, or even a blanket? Do you have technology? You have a computer or a phone or a tablet that you're connected to watch and listen to this. And then you have the electricity to charge or plug those devices in. And then you have the internet to access this. So just think about all those things real quick. And you can pause the video if you want to look, if you more reflect, and then, but I will move on. And now I want you to think about your family. So you're still in that space, or you're not really necessarily paying attention to your surroundings so much, but you're thinking about your family and friends. And you're thinking about how hard has it been through the past, what? Oh my gosh, 8 months of the pandemic to be separated from them. How did you connect with these people? Are all these people further from you, closer to you, a bit of in between? Did you rely on technology to connect with these people when you couldn't in person? Did you feel separated from them? Do you have kids and are currently trying to balance a job and also teach your kids, or make sure that they're learning in their online classroom setting? And are they begging you to go back to school, wanting a bit of a more normal setting, wanting to see their friends? Are you begging to go back to a normal setting? I know sometimes I am. And the things that we take for granted, right? So remember these points. So with your family and friends and with your surroundings, and you're going to reflect on them in a series of questions. So think them through. You might need that pen and paper that I mentioned earlier to write your thoughts down. And again, if at any moment you decide to pause, please do so. I do want to say, though, that the questions are meant to be a bit shorter. So if you're actually thinking about it, do it at about 60 seconds and then move on. So first question, what would it take for you to leave your home? Excuse me. Brainstorm a list of reasons that you would permanently leave your home, even with just a day's notice. So right here, I have a pause and reflect button, not button, but section. So you can pause here and think about it. But I'm going to continue on. Moving forward, if you had to leave the United States, where would you want to go? And for an added challenge, think of countries that you don't know the language. I would think about five countries that you can go to that you think are safe and that you don't know the language. So go ahead and pause as needed. Imagine that you were traveling with only one suitcase. Oof, that'd be really difficult for me. Brainstorm a list of things that you would take with you. Remember, you're on a day's notice. So what would you throw in your bag real quick? Any valuables? And remember, it's only one suitcase. So then, after you brainstorm a list of things, what would you need to buy when you get to the country that you previously stated? So brainstorm a list of things that you would need to buy and then come back. So upon arrival to your new country, you must fill out piles of paperwork. Woohoo, we all love paperwork. But it's in another language. How do you approach this if you don't know the language? How do you ask for help? How do you move forward? But you have to remember that this paperwork is your lifeline. It is the ticket to your safe haven. So what do you do? Moving on. You finish all of your paperwork and you're ready to go. They say it's approved. Go on. You step outside. You don't know what to do next. How do you hail a taxi? Are there taxis there? What's the transportation look like? Again, that language barrier. So how do you ask for help? Who do you look to? Also, where do you go? Do you know the local store to get that list of things that you need? Do you know where your housing is? Go ahead and pause as needed. How scary is this for you? Not knowing where you are, how to speak the language, where to go, who to talk to, who to rely on. And really, who's with you? Are you by yourself? Are you with your family? Are you traveling in a group? Congratulations. You have now put yourself in an immigrant's shoes just for a second, just for a few minutes. I wish I could see everyone's faces as to how stressful that was, not because I love to see everyone in stress, and distress, but just because it is stressful. I have done the exercise, I wrote the exercise and I've done it, and I'm too much of a planner, and you can't plan through all of this, unfortunately. But something to remember is that you thought about that in the comfort of your own home, your own institution, your office. You did not actually have to live through this. So I encourage you to take a few moments to reflect on that experience. You can even do like a 2 to 5 minute paper on it, just so then you see what the progression was for yourself, or look through your notes and think about how that felt. I do encourage writing a bit of a reflection of the overall experience, so then you keep that in the back of your mind for when you're talking to your students about their experiences, and that stress level that you had. So you can pause here, but I will move forward. Okay. So why is this important? you, as the viewer, as the attendee, thought that this presentation was important. I think the knowledge is important. But also, or we're here and we're sitting here like, my students are important, but why is this whole topic important? I keep saying that a lot. I apologize. Like I said, I'm getting used to this recording, right? So in this profession of higher education and student affairs, we're known as helpers. We are looked to in any sort of situation, whether it is a roommate conflict to a crisis to a mediation or anything in between. If there's an issue, we're charged with helping. And that could be to provide resources. That could be to provide a safe space or even just a listening ear. So how do you go about providing that listening ear and having an understanding if you don't have that prior knowledge or that prior understanding of what they may have gone through or what their family has gone through? Or how do you provide resources that you think are legitimate when you haven't actually thought it through yourself? Or a safe space when you don't really understand what they have gone through or the stresses. And this experience, this immersive experience, is still very, very minute compared to what these students go through. But it gives you a small piece of understanding, more than what you would have had before, right? We also must remember that as helpers with these students, we're seen as an extension of the government due to our positions in higher education. This is because of everything that they've gone through. They've had to work with government officials. So basically everything that's official is seen as an extension of the government. So how do you build that trust? And I'm going to touch on that later in the presentation. But in order to build that trust, you have to have this prior understanding and this prior knowledge. So that's what that experience was for. So then you put yourself in their shoes. So then you can then provide that help when they do come to you and they do eventually trust you. It's also one of those understanding their lived experience or being able to relate to them somehow, some way. So just keep that in mind as we're going through this and navigating how to talk to them. So I'm going to move forward. Remember to pause as needed. So I have a few fast facts. Did you know? Currently, there are 47 million immigrants living within the U.S., and that's about 14.4% of the population. I think it's a little bit higher now, just because due to the census and everything, you know, collecting all those numbers, that's a lot of people. But that's the last recorded number. Why so many? Well, because a lot of countries are not like the United States, where we live in a democracy. So they are in poverty. They want a higher quality of life. They are in political unrest. They're escaping that warfare or that violence. So they come to places like the United States because they are seeking freedom. They're seeking religious freedom. And then when we break it down into numbers, so think about this as like a triangle. I'm starting at 47 million, then I'm going down to 11.2 million of that are undocumented students, or not students, I'm sorry, just undocumented individuals. So those are individuals that have crossed the border and do not have any documentation whatsoever with the United States. And we know these numbers due to surveys, due to them registering elsewhere for something, whether it's work or whatever, the variety of reasons. So this number is hard to determine. This is the estimated number of it. And it's been through research, they think that the number is higher within that 47 million. And then moving down that triangle or that pyramid, upside down pyramid really, 2 million of that is are immigrants and second generation Americans that are enrolled full time in US colleges. I'm one of the 2 million due to my second generation American status. And that's important to note because that's a huge population that we work with. And that number will only grow as we stay in this profession. So it's great that you're getting the understanding now and that I'm learning about this too. So then we can help our students now, but also help our students in the future, especially when I'm going back to that family separation policy. That's a lot of students that we're going to have to help with that are traumatized from that experience. So understanding how to help them and understanding that we have our students now and those students. So the point of what I'm saying is that the number will grow. Moving down, we have 700,000 DACA recipients, and that's as of November 2019, so a year ago. This number is accurate because they are required to register with the United States. DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. So basically children who immigrated with their parents, unbeknownst to them, upon their, like, they could not deny going to the US, they were following their parents. So President Obama signed DACA into law, essentially saying that these children, eventually teenagers, can apply and obtain a worker permit and driver's license and receive protection from deportation. So a lot of the students that you're going to work with, or that you are currently working with, that might identify as an immigrant could be DACA. They do not have to disclose information to you. The university does not have to disclose that information to any of the helpers, really, but the students know their status. And something to bring up within the pandemic, this came up a while ago. Frontline workers, we do have a lot of students that are currently going through med school that are DACA recipients that volunteer their time to help other frontline workers, or decide they were told, okay, well, the last few months of your med school career, you're going to help frontline workers, like, actually be in the field working with COVID patients. And a lot of them were DACA recipients. Moving down, immigrants, they're almost twice as likely to have a doctorate than your student that has roots here and had going back generations of living within the United States. So they're twice as likely, but they're also 4 times as likely to not have a high school diploma. So it's a huge, huge thing for them to be in college. And then it's even bigger when they get to getting their PhD. But it's important to note that the resilience that they have significantly increases their chances of receiving a doctorate. So any student that you talk to, just know that they have it in them to be extremely hardworking. They have it in them to do the work that they need to do to be successful. They got to college, or you could be, say, an admissions counselor. That's what I did before I went to grad school, working with DACA students or undocumented, whoever that falls under the umbrella of immigrant student, and having that resilience to get into college in the first place. So moving on, I'm going to play a video. Anyone fans of Hamilton? Anyone? Cool. Awesome. Yeah, awesome. I kid. I'm a huge fan of Hamilton. And last year, they were dropping Hamilton mixtape. They were dropping the Hamilton mixtape, and that was really cool because it was a new song every month. And this one was Immigrants, We Get the Job Done, and I think it is done beautifully. The director, Thomas Whitmore, really wanted to give a voice to the immigrant narrative and shine a light on America's ghostwriters, and they talk about that in the video. A bit of another content warning: there is some language, there is a little bit of violence, and just, yeah. So we'll get to it. Keep that in mind. I encourage you to either rewind and go back and watch it again, or find it on YouTube. The reason being is because, excuse me, I find myself reading the closed captions and missing the images that go along with it, or watching the images and missing everything that's being said. So you might need to watch it a couple times to get everything that they go over in the video. But I do have a few points. So really outstanding work. I'm like at a loss of words, I guess. I went over my immersive experience with myself, right? I'm going through all these questions. And then I remember that this video is a thing. And I was like, I need to have this video in my presentation. And it's amazing how so many of the questions that I went over hit the points that they talk about: trying to pack their house in a suitcase at the dead of night, running away, essentially political unrest, different things like that they go over in the video. And so you kind of had a small understanding of that as well. So a few points. It takes place on a train. And this is for a few reasons. One is that it's like a never-ending cycle. And you see that at the end with the trains all going through. And you're moving through borders. And then you saw, it was a great transition between all of the different occupations, different lives, different cultures through the train. But also within Central America, going up to Mexico, actually they use trains. Immigrants will use trains to flee their country. Central America. I had to think about my geography for a second. And travel up. They can't get into the US via train, but through Central America and Mexico, they can. Unfortunately, they pack so many people in these trains, and they're not just like trains that we go on. They are literally a steel box, and they pack in as many as they can. And unfortunately, tons of people die because of it, because no air ventilation, because of the harsh conditions, heat, cold, lack of water, hygiene, everything. So there's a lot of different reasons why it takes place on a train, other than it transitions nicely. But something that I want to mention is the fact that it was full of diversity, which arguably is what gives the United States and other countries the strength, being built on that diversity in the first place, and continuing to encourage it is extremely important, in my opinion. Moving on, you see flags are being made. You see the artists singing in front of them. You kind of see like a sweatshop. It looks like they're sewing the stars on. And that's very interesting, because they are in the background doing the work for us who use these flags to display our freedom. Yet they're excluded from that when they came to the US seeking the same freedom that we sought hundreds of years ago, right? And they're making those flags, and it's in a sweatshop, and everyone knows that those conditions are poor, those working conditions are poor. And going from there, you have these different occupations that pop up: picking fruit, construction, meat packing facility, kitchen maids, hospitals, so working as nurses or nannies in a home. All of these people are hidden in real life. Think about the maid that goes to your room to make your bed and clean your room while you're at a conference. Do you ever see them? I don't. I normally don't. Maybe when they're knocking on doors to make sure no one's in there if I decide to sleep in, but I normally don't. Or, the person who's washing dishes in the back in the kitchen. You don't see them. So these are hidden figures, hidden people, basically. But they allow the country to move. In this cycle, they allow the country to move forward. And without them, what would we be doing? And because they're taking these jobs, and it's not necessarily that they're helping us and that I'm encouraging that they stay in these positions, because I'm not. What I'm saying is that we need all people. And that's what they're kind of getting at here, is that they are in the background making sure that everything moves forward and everything continues. Going from there, you see violence and warfare. So a bomb goes off, a man saves a child in the rubble. And he was walking through the train, stumbles upon refugees as well, walks through a fence, and is eventually trying to seek freedom. Fences are symbolic for good and bad. Fences act as a barrier, right? So you see it and you stop unauthorized migration, border crossing, but also you see it as light at the end of the tunnel. I have made it. I am here. All I have to do is get across that fence and I will be free. I will have my safe haven. So they kind of go through that process, but through it, it also humanizes the faces of war, right? So we think about like Syrian refugees. A lot of people may have not actually met a Syrian refugee, but that right there, you actually can envision it. You can envision what they've gone through a bit. You can envision that they lived in a tent, that they had to cross borders, that they had to be on a small boat for several weeks at a time in order to cross. It's food for thought, right? And then at the end of that, you see scenes of immigration, custom enforcement, so ICE. And you think about how we've had our ICE raids where they're knocking on doors for deportation, and they're aggressive. They're not kind. They're asking for papers. They're waking people up in the middle of the night. And that's true. That's not just something that you see in the movies. That does actually occur. And then people wait at facilities for deportation. And that could be a couple days. It could be weeks. I made us watch through the end, through the credits, because at the end you see Daveed Diggs, who is in Hamilton, walking with students, part of an organization called Get Lit. So Get, G-E-T, Lit, L-I-T. But they promote poetry and literacy for young people, young students. And all these students have been affected by immigration issues. So they show at the beginning of what this looks like with fruit picking, sweatshops, creating this flag, or, sewing the flag, essentially. All of these different things, escaping poverty, escaping warfare, to this last point with these students, full circle, to bring it back to reality and basically shine a light on the next generation of students to raise awareness. So that next generation is the students that you're working with and that you will be working with. So I just thought it was kind of cool to bring it full circle for everyone. So moving forward, and like I said, please pause and go back if you need to, rewatch it a couple times, because there's so many hidden eggs in it, essentially, hidden meetings, that I could spend 45 minutes to an hour just talking about the video. So check it out. Moving on. So how can we help? We're helpers, right? But what can we do? Well, first off, we should have some knowledge of immigration policy. So I mentioned DACA. It would be nice, it would be good, it would be nice to know the history of that, where DACA came from and what the point of it was. Why did DACA come about? But also understanding different things such as, say, how we've had issues with international students this summer. President Trump had said, well, the Trump administration as a whole has said that they would rescind visas for international students if they were in online classes. And that was devastating for them. And so institutions had to scramble to figure out a way how to support these students. So even though they're international students, they kind of, are adjacent to this immigration that I'm talking about. So knowing the different policies on how to help them, how to support them, and understanding like what they're going through. Are they trying to become a green card holder? Or are their parents a green card holder right now? What does that mean for them? What does that mean for you as a helper? Understanding those different phrases. And I do break some of the definitions down for you in the worksheet that I provide. Resources, resources, resources. So I have a professor that is huge on resources, and I totally get it, because these students do not know where to go. It's a miracle that they got to college sometimes. They had, a lot of times they had to have either the resiliency or a mentor in high school to get to them to this point, going back to they are 4 times more likely to not complete high school. So keep that in mind. So what I suggest is that you have a running tab on a Google Drive or a notebook of different resources, say the local market if they carry kosher food, or if the Walmart has products for certain hair types. Different things like that will help the student trust you more. You're building that trust, right? Because you're an extension of the government. Help them feel more comfortable in this foreign place, essentially. And this is for your international students too, so keep that in mind. And this is also understanding that you could have a DACA student that knows this, but not necessarily, not always. And if they decide to go to an institution that's further away, they're not going to know the resources. So having that as a guide and readily available is crucial and helps build that trust. Moving on to patience, kindness, and guidance. Patience is key. If you are finding that you're struggling to connect with a student, don't stop. Keep going. Have patience to talk to them. If they don't open up to you right away, it's okay. If you show them the resources that you have, if you show them that your understanding of policy, and if you show them, a bit of compassion or mentorship, they will eventually open up to you. Kindness goes a long way, and I think everyone can agree on that. Guidance is great as well. So really, you're sitting there talking to the student, and they're struggling in courses. You're able to tell them where to go, just like any other student. But that goes further for these students when they haven't a clue, and they're not used to having so much help. So this is crucial. And then all of this really goes on to you becoming a mentor, a confidant, or parental figure, or all three. That's just the way it is as being a helper, right? One, they say that we live in a fishbowl sometimes, particularly if you're in residence life, right? But you take on those roles as that helper. You take on that role when you're guiding them through this. So even if you're an admissions counselor, when I was an admissions counselor, I became more of a mentor at times because I'm making sure that they have all of their application paperwork done, all of the different pieces of information that I need, but also, is this a right fit? What are you looking for? How can I help you? What's going on in your life that's going to affect you that I need to, provide resources in advance, all of that stuff. And as I've been saying, that will help build that trust that you need in order to help them in the future. Moving on. So what's next? We're here. you're like, well, I'm gonna end this presentation and go on my merry way. No, not so fast. You came here because you wanted to know the words, because you wanted to know more information. So at the end of the day, you need to listen to the lived experience of your students, of all students, but your immigrant students who you might not have a lot of connections with, who you might not have a total understanding. Where, say, if you're a first gen student, I'm also a first gen, and I meet another first gen, I relate right away. Let's go. Their experience is different than mine, but we relate. You might not have that with an immigrant student. So you have to really listen to their lived experience. And you need to center your advocacy around the needs of them. So when you're listening to them, understand what they're asking for. Are they asking for just resources, or are they asking for more? Are they asking for help? Are they asking for a listening ear? Are they unsure of policy? Are they unsure of the uncertainty, the unknown? Because something to keep in mind is that one of your students may be DACA, but their parents or their aunts and uncles could be a completely different status, like legal status. Someone could be a green card holder, another one could be a naturalized citizen, another one could be undocumented. How do you handle all that uncertainty and all those different status? So understanding how to advocate for them and where they need to go for that. And so I just kind of messed myself up a little bit. So I say advocate with immigrant youth, not for them. This is kind of like a two-way thing. So you can advocate for them at times, but you also want to make sure that you're advocating with them, because at the end of the day, you have that voice and you have that confidence to then instill that confidence into them for them to step up, right? And help themselves. They have that resiliency, but they might not have that trust in other people that they have in you. So understanding that you can advocate with them by just giving them the confidence or the trust, because you say that I trust Mary over in financial aid to help you with this issue. You're still being an advocate and you're still providing a resource. And at the end, you need to walk the walk, talk the talk, walk the walk, take action. Don't be an advocate just in your office. Be an advocate outside as well. Talk to other people about your experiences with your students. I mean, obviously, you need to keep things confidential, but just understand that other people will need to understand how to work with these students. So as me, I'm trying to walk the walk, talk the talk with you by helping educate others. And take action. So putting all of this together, you will build that trust with the student. And I don't know, I really hope that I have put that out enough today, that that's crucial to your success. It's crucial with any student, but with these students, due to seeing you as an extension of the government, they need that trust. They need someone to rely on, a stable figure, essentially. And by you doing what you're doing today, learning, helps you move that forward, helps you build that trust. And I do provide resources right here as well. So you can pause, take a picture of it, check these out. Different legal resources that are extremely important and that you can follow along. And also understanding citizenship. How does that work? I'm always going on Google researching things for my students because I don't know how to answer their questions sometimes in terms to like very specific questions. So having an understanding of this is crucial. But that does conclude my presentation today. So I want to thank you for coming. I really appreciate it. Your students will appreciate it. I hope you enjoyed it. Please email me if you have any questions, smw34528@huskies.bloomu.edu, and I am happy to help in any way that I can or provide more resources. I hope you have a wonderful morning, afternoon, evening. Enjoy. Thank you. Bye.